Good afternoon, and welcome to Taste Migrations Coastal Culinary Dialogues, curated by Avid Learning. Goa's cuisine has long been a crossroads of influences, shaped by indigenous traditions, Portuguese legacies, and global encounters. Today's session traces this evolving culinary identity and considers how Goan food traditions are being preserved, adapted, and reimagined for the future. From the warmth of the tavern culture to the innovations of contemporary fine dining, this conversation explores what defines Goan gastronomy today and what might define it tomorrow. We are joined by Chef Thomas Zacharias, founder of the Locavore, and food historian, author, and television host, Odette Mascarenas. Both speakers are our culinary curators at the festival and have curated some very interesting projects, which we hope you will take time to explore. Chef Thomas and the Locavore have curated What Does Lost Taste Like at the Directorate of Accounts, and Odette has curated The Culinary Odyssey of Goa at the Art Park. I'm sure they will discuss these projects during their session today. Guiding the discussion is our moderator, Asad Lalji, SVP at SR Group, CEO of Avid Learning, and curator at the Royal Opera House. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. As the Serendipity Arts Festival celebrates its 10th edition, it stands as a living testament to the power of art to create connections across disciplines, communities, generations. In just a decade, Serendipity has reimagined the role of festivals as a laboratory of ideas, a space where tradition converges or converses with technology, where heritage meets experimentation, and where art making becomes a collective act of learning. Thank you and congratulations to the team, for the Smriti, Mrinal, Nandita, and Amisha for this remarkable journey and for having us back here again. For us at Avid Learning, it's been a pleasure to be part of this journey since 2017 as collaborators and constant believers in the shared philosophy that the arts, whether it's visual, culinary, or performative, are the most powerful vehicles of shared understanding. And this year we continue our tradition by presenting two specially curated sessions. Our earlier panel in the day was moderated by Amruta Patil, paid a tribute to Mario Miranda's artistic legacy, addressing the broader conversations around the evolving form and content and language of visual storytelling. And so welcome to the second session, Taste Migrations, Coastal Culinary Dialogues, which brings chefs, curators, cultural historians to explore the intersection of storytelling, heritage, and identity of the coastal cuisines. So if mountains divide, coasts connect. For centuries, India's western shoreline has served as a meeting point where spice met sailors, where traders brought not only goods, but stories, ideas, and ingredients that would forever change the Indian kitchen. Long before borders and custom posts, there were ports. Bombay, Goa, Mangalore, Calicut, each a node in a vast network of trade, belief, and taste. Ships came bearing cinnamon, cardamom from Arabia, chilies and vinegar from Portugal, tea from China, and culinary curiosity from everywhere. These encounters created hybrid vocabularies of food, dishes that they still carry the genetic memory of migration. Considering how Vindaloo was born, the Appam and stew, the Grown Pond curry, the Kerala biryani, you all know the drill, and we have experts who are going to talk about it. Each recipe is a documentation of adaptation, where global ingredients were absorbed and made local, where every flavor tells a story of arrival and belonging. But as we celebrate these inherent flavors, we must ask what happens now. In today's world of viral recipes, global fusion, how do we protect the integrity of these cuisines while allowing them to evolve? What is authenticity? And when authentic dishes themselves are born for exchange? Finally, the conversation is not about where food comes from, but where it's going. As climate change, urbanization, and migration shapes our food system, Coastal communities once again stand at the front line of this transformation. The coolies of Mumbai, the fisherfolks of Goa, the farmers of Malabar, they're not just bearers of tradition, but agents of resilience. Their knowledge of tides, crops, cycles often are lessons in sustainability that our future depends on. And to preserve a cuisine is to preserve a coastline, a community, and the way of knowing the world. And so we embark on this discussion. We will be joined by a distinguished panelist. We have lost one panelist because she was she was subject to the it didn't go flight cancellation. So Tanya won't be with us, but we have Odette Mascarenhas, food historian, author, and television host, and Chef Thomas Zachary, Chef T-Zach, as I was told to call him, who are going to just have a very fantastic discussion. So guys, take your seats. Where are you all? The one with the paper is mine. Hello. Right. Excited to be in discussion with both of you all. And Odette, I'm going to start with you. Goa's coastline has long been the melting point for people, ingredients,
Sure.
ideas. And as someone who's carries the live and inherited memory of Goan food traditions, I have this one big question: is how do each of you interpret taste migration, and how do you define coastal cuisine today? Is it geography? Is it history? Is it technique? Or is it something more fluid? But let's start with your research on Goan cuisine traces a culinary lineage shaped by the Portuguese, the African, and local influences. So, what does this hybridity tell us about Goa's place on the historical spice route?
Thank you, Assad. And good afternoon to all of you. Yes, I've done a lot of study based on the topic. My two books, The Culinary Heritage of Goa and The Culinary Odyssey of Goa, dwells a lot in terms of how food migrated, not only from offshore or within the country, but also within each other families, communities in Goa. Now, let me talk about the natural harbors that Goa had, again, linked to how trade actually happened. We have a lot of rivers which crisscross through our region. So, in the past, whether it was a dhow, which was an Arab boat, or whether it was a caravel, which was Portuguese, they didn't need to get into smaller boats and move their goods. Their ships could sail right up the river and go inland, which would help them trade better with the interior regions. I'll come to that a little later, but geography and history plays a big role in that. Let's take the historical part of it. When the ships came in, they not only brought ingredients, they brought recipes. On those ships, there were nuns, there were traders, there were people who settled down and created families. So there was a lot of things which they left behind in terms of a legacy. I'll give you an example. Around the 2nd century BCE, we had the Silaris dynasty. And they were doing a lot of business with the Romans. Now, before the Kadamba period, there is proof that the Greeks came in and they converted to Buddhism, because that's where we see the Buddhist caves around Goa. And we have in our Goan culture or culinary culture a lot of steamed products or cooked products wrapped in leaves, which perhaps is a lot, especially rice. We do the padilios with the rice and the chun, and it's steamed in leaves in August. That could be something linked to the way dolmas was done among the Greeks, when they used to steam rice, etc. Something that, and you can imagine that was BCE, that was many, many years back. All right, fast forward, the Arabs came in. And they ruled as long as the Portuguese, because we are talking about the first century CE to 224 CE. They were the Indo-Parthians. Now, this is a very interesting part because they didn't create their headquarters in Goa. They were in another place. That time regions were different. Goa melted into a kingdom, etc. They used to do business through the India Silk Road, sorry, not India, Chinese Silk Road. And I always wondered that, one of our oldest curries, the shagoti, which a lot of people now see as the shakuti, has star anise. And star anise has never ever grown in Goa. And that star anise is also used in a garam masala, which is used for a lot of preparations. That connection came in where this China Silk Route connected us more to the east because they were trading from east to west. Then came the Arabs. The Arabs, Yemeni merchants who used to do a lot of business in Kerala as well as Gujarat. Somehow or the other, the dynasties realized that they were beneficial to us, and they offered that let's do trade, and Goa became a centralized harbor, especially during the Kadamba period. Vijayanagar also, because they used to trade in war horses. But what did the Arabs bring? From Egypt and Venice, they used those ports to take a lot of our products outside, while they brought in dried fruit, figs, dates, etc. And that is how it came in. And of course, a very interesting preparation, which maybe a lot of us have not related to. The Arabs used to have a dumba, which they used to cook, a leg of meat, dry product. And they used to keep on telling, at least these are the stories that come down, no factual proof. They used to turn around and say, this is sukha. And in Goa, I don't know how many of you all realize that in all community kitchens today, we have a sukhe, which pronounced in the Gaut Saraswat Brahmins, and even the Catholics today make a dry chicken sukhe or a mutton sukhe. These are the two meats which go out beautifully. I always believe that some sort of point of inspiration came in from some dynasty across the thing that our grandmothers must have picked up. So, but again, now coming, the Portuguese finally managed to defeat the Arabs in the Battle of Dew. That was 1498, 1510, they reached Goa. And that was a period of what we call Golden Goa. Now, what did the Portuguese do? This is a story which is very well told. A lot of people don't know much before the Portuguese. But anyway, their ships were well planned. In the month of September, October, the ships used to come from Lisbon. And November, December, they used to come from Hormuz. And in April, May, it used to come from Malacca. Now, from each end of these regions, there would be different products brought into Goa. So we are talking about from Hormuz, the dry figs, dates, plums, rose water, those were the things. We are talking about the Portuguese, of course, they brought in the jams, not only the fruit and which we see and we talk so highly about, and the pimento, which a lot of people believe that was the first evidence of chilies, which a lot of people now debate on. But they brought pimento, and they brought in a beautiful methodology of grafting. So not only did they graft mangoes, they grafted the chilies based on the topography of the soil, whether it was sandy soil or depending, Goa has got different types of soils. So they brought in that. The nuns brought in the use of pastries, egg-based pastries. It was like everything was explored and come into it, and they were for 451. And the best thing is they documented a lot of things. So yes, trade did influence a lot of things, but I'm not going to forget one more thing which I recently found out. The Portuguese also had Mozambique, and from there, Africa, we used to have a lot of connect. But there was a very interesting pre-Arab also migration, and that was the Siddhis. They were a tribe which came into India, not only to Goa, And they left a little bit of legacy that we still see in our kitchens today. The use of ragi bakri. In fact, we are serving that at the art park so that people can, not in terms of the cities, but that's a connection which has come into another kitchen. And we also kokum sharbat, which a lot of Gaut Saraswat Brahmins and Hindu homes use. So that was their contribution. A lot of it must have been lost. We're still trying to find some trace of that. Yes, as you rightly said, trade and exploration of things brought a fantastic number of products here.
Thank you for that wonderful historical summary. I think you've just done it so well. I know you wanted to present a slide, but unfortunately, I don't think this place is kind of conducive to presenting something. Chef Zach, T. Zach, I'm going to turn to you. The Locovo brings together producers, chefs, home cooks, and organizations across India working at the intersection of food, culture, and sustainability. Your work, you have many campaigns. You have the Wild Food Project, the Millet Revival Project, the Local Food Club. It shows how traditional foods travel, adapt, and survive through people who carry them. So, in the context of, taste migrations, what have you learned about how coastal communities keep the food cultures alive while everything around them, actually climate, markets, keep shifting? And can these communities teach us about what can they teach us about continuity and adaptation, especially in this whole climate pressure system?
Thank you and good afternoon to all of you. So one of the projects that we're currently working on is called the Mumbai Koli project, and it's the impact campaign of an incredible documentary called Against the Tide, which I would recommend all of you watching. And it follows two Koli fishermen, Rakesh and Ganesh, who yeah, who are lifelong friends. Rakesh continues to fish the traditional way, and Ganesh explores modern methods, and it's kind of follows their journey through. And we've decided to kind of expand on this narrative and engage with people in Bombay. Now, the Kolis are the indigenous native communities of Bombay. They've been around for 800 years. But the city and its people have kind of, over time, almost forgotten about their existence. And they're further having to deal with things like coastal redevelopment, um, climate change, the changing habits of Mumbaikars, the fact that larger fishing trawlers have come in and taken up a lot of their catch. And so we're trying to bring some of those stories to the forefront through screenings, through like sessions like this. We did a pub quiz. We are publishing a cookbook. Um, and through this, we've realized that, I mean, they have had to contend with a lot of these issues. For example, we featured a story on two women, Ratna and Alka, who live in Chimbai village in Mumbai, in your Bandra, and that's right where one of the coastal road projects is happening. They were primarily their subsistence was clams and oysters, and because of the coastal project, there has been dumping of cement in their area, and as a result, the waters have become murkier. They are getting lower catch, and the clams and the oysters are smaller, developing slower, and so they've gone from being able to earn 400 rupees a day to practically nothing. And there are many such examples like this. These are fisher folk and people in communities who carry with them a lot of knowledge about the tides, about moon cycles, about the behavior of fish, and have coexisted with the sea for hundreds of years today they are being challenged by factors that are outside their control. Um, a lot of it has to deal with the land that they live in, the fact that they are under threat of being displaced from those areas. And so I think they're navigating, I mean, holding on to culinary traditions, I don't think is the number one priority, but it is something that still carries through in their cooking, in their food, and somehow understanding that and knowing about that. Like for example, we try to feature a recipe in the cookbook that uses mud skippers, which are these tiny amphibian fish, and just to and there's something that
Not kuta, right? What's it
it's
called?
called nevti, and there's something that the Koli communities have eaten for a long time, and we could barely find it. We finally somehow managed to source it through someone, and so even what they primarily identify as their cuisine, their food, is getting lost. So they are also having to contend with the fact that their food culture is under threat.
Thank you for that. In fact, we had a conversation with Ganesh actually on Thursday. He did a talk for us at TIFR. It's part of the Mumbai Climate Week. We did our first program with them, and he brought all these points and he mentioned you now it's coming to me. But we had actually presented the Kohli story at COP28 in Dubai, and also have done many things. So next time we should chat more. You could piggyback off some of the work we're doing because you're doing such fantastic work. Odette, through your Goan Culinary Club, you worked on recovering recipes, the survival of which, I mean, it's only oral tradition that you're trying to document. What has this process revealed to you about the function of memory in kitchens, and how much is lost when these oral lineages disappear?
All right, that's a very interesting question. We went from home to home in the talukas, different talukas across Perne, Sange, Kankon, all these places which were once with under Portuguese influence and came in later. And one thing we realized when we spoke to most of the mothers, grandmothers, is that my recipe is the right recipe, and we found each recipe marginally different from each other, but you can't take these older women to task. We just smiled and started documenting, and that's when I came to know that Goa follows what we call as the matriarchal system in homes. Unlike maybe the cooks at the royal courts in Rampur and a few Maratha establishments, there it's documented. So people know exactly and follow the right recipe in the way. I'll give you an example since you was talking about fish. Uh, the confusion that I faced when I went into different homes where the fish curry was concerned. I'm talking about a singular community, like a Catholic community or a Hindu community. In some places, there was coconut milk. In some, there was ground coconut. The textures differed, the color differed. And I was given this very standard statement, oh, it depended on the status of the family. If we had more coconut trees, we used milk, and we were a little bit more prosperous than the others. I found that very interesting because I think over decades, a lot of people's prosperity grew, and they started using coconut milk inside. So, where did that sort of feeling come in terms of keeping the traditional recipe alive, was a little bit of a question. The second thing, when I went into the homes and I watched them cook, I used to hear this, ago ileshege, mut galgo. Now, ilesha means take a little, mut means a handful. And I'm standing there with a teaspoon because I wanted to know what was and there again, I think even in recording those recipes, I could have misplaced a few grams here and there because it's not very easy to do that. Then there are things in terms of what I would say historical context. Every festival we have Nyoris and we have kalkals, and we have modaks for Ganesh. And the fillings tend to be different. In some, you'll get chun, which is coconut and jaggery. In the others, you will get besan, and they're just called nyoris. Everything is different from within. Now, at that point of time, I started thinking to myself, how do I sort of document a nyori? Should I say that the filling of the nyoris change? Is it community to community? Of course, the Catholics never used besan and chana, the chana dal and thing, but it was chun most of the time. Could be because of conversion over the centuries, could be about a lot of factors. So there again, oral transmission from one family to the other, how much they retain from the previous families, that was one of the problems. I'm sure none of us have heard about these dishes, which is called matmate, and the second one is called ub malele talle. Now, these are very traditional dishes, not seen in most Hindu kitchens. It's a Hindu preparations made of dry mackerel, because those families wanted to keep it to themselves. A certain segment of those families have those, what you say, recipes, which again they want to only pass on to their daughter in laws, again with not the correct proportions, because they want their sons to prefer their cooking to their wives' cooking. So they would keep that secret masala with them and keep it till it is gone. They are gone, and maybe it's lost forever to us. And at the end, when I was putting the book, I said, "Okay, I'm taking." Buying to photo katta, I would take your photograph and I'm putting it next to the recipe. So please give me the correct ingredients, and that worked to a small extent. I also found really hurt about this. There were beautiful dishes like the pastes de Santa Clara. It was something that came from Coimbra. It used to be on the tables of a lot of Indo-Luso homes. Today it's not there. Preparations like the Gario, the Aleganti in Gaut Saraswat, festival cooking. Um, because that oral transmission used to come from one to the other, nothing documented. And I'm sorry to say, with nuclear family is coming on board today, it is bound to get lost. A very heartbreaking incident, which I'd like to tell you in my own family. Of course, I was not alive to see that before I was born. My father in law, who was the chef of the Taj Bombay at that time, they used to do this oral transmission, and the Taj said, let's document it. And they got an educated boy to stand next to him, and he painstakingly gave them all 600 odd recipes written down on a book. Now, this happens in a lot of Indo Portuguese houses also. They got notebooks with scribbling on. So, written down in a book, and the moment the 600 recipe was written, I'm given to understand that the fellow ran away with all the recipes. Yeah, 600 recipes lost. So again, coming to that, I feel that if you're talking about documentation, it's just not documentation that is needed, but really effective documentation, which is
But you're talking about the Taj. In fact, we just did an event where Mr. Chatwal was on our stage at Opera House, and they've done a project where all the chefs of the Taj have contributed to their mother's recipes. And the book is called Ma Ki Roti, and it's basically to go to this foundation called Ma. So all the chefs have given their mother's favorite recipes, which has been published into a book, which is being sold, and the profits go to this
that's
foundation.
super,
Yeah.
super.
But my mother used to do something else. Every time we went out for dinner. I said, "Wow, that's nice." She said, "Rubbish, mine is better." And the next day on our dinner table, that dish would be there. Not better, but it used to be there. But Thomas, it's in 2014 you set out on a solo journey across 18 states, documenting local traditions, indigenous ingredients, and home cooked meals. How have oral narratives of home cooked meals, from cooks to small producers, shaped your understanding of what authenticity and diversity of an Indian food tradition is? You want to share with me?
Um, yeah, that feels like a lifetime ago. It's now been 11 years of more travel, and the more I travel around India, I realize how little I know and how much more there is to explore. And I resonate with a lot of what Odette said about how all these recipes, traditions are either at the brink of being lost or lost completely. The one difference I think that's at least slowly taking place, at least from my observations, is 11 years ago, going to everywhere from Himachal to Nagaland to Gujarat, people were less excited or interested in sharing or talking about their food culture and their recipes. Uh, in fact, I encountered a lot of shame around it. Why do you want to? Let me cook you something fancy, as opposed to what we typically eat. Today, and I've seen that change happen. I'm not sure if you've noticed that over the years, but that's that narrative is slowly shifting in that, and maybe you have, you know, social media to thank for it. Maybe you have the rise of regional Indian cuisine in mainstream narratives around Indian food to thank for it. But people are slowly becoming more appreciative of their own food culture, taking some more pride in it. I don't think the documentation is happening. I don't think there is an effective transference of knowledge, but at least there is a gentle mindset shift that I've noticed over the years. I never get into the debate around authenticity. I think we've discussed that um, till the cows come home. But I think the diversity is still very much there, and a lot of the culinary diversity in the country and a lot of the old knowledge rests with native communities, that especially Adivasi communities across the country, and they're spread across the country, and they've managed to retain a lot of this knowledge in their food systems. But even with them, because of say livelihood opportunities, because the next generations in this era that we live in aren't potentially going to carry on that knowledge forward. So I think we're at a very in like we're at the precipice of something where we have some agency, but we
So
need to.
what can be done to ensure that this documentation? We have Alaknanda sitting here who does a bit of archival projects. Now, archives are also something new.
Mhm.
India is famous for not archiving things, right?
Yeah.
How do we get people to, own their recipes, be proud of them, to actually document them, to pass it on as a legacy?
I think we can all do our own part, just like Odette's father-in-law's example. In fact, there are now different practitioners. There's a wonderful organization called Nivala that is actually helping people archive and document their family recipes. There are initiatives all over. I think it needs to be a movement rather than just small nudges here and there. So collectively, as people, um, one way to do it is to make it aspirational, where people should really take pride in the fact that okay, I'm carrying some of this forward, and the other is to simplify it, make it easier, make it more accessible as an idea.
I think also making people proud of their legacy, right?
Yeah.
If you're proud of it, you'll take it forward. I remember my mother wrote all the recipes and sent it to me when I was in New York. I never cooked, so they're gone. But anyway, let's move on to curating tastes. Odette, as one of the earliest, as you would be called the OGs of the Serendipity Arts Festival, curators in the food platform, and you've curated many editions. So tell us, how did you envision this platform to how it's changed? It's been 10 years to even your project that you have this year.
When Mr. Munjal spoke to me in 2016 and told me, I want you to showcase food as culinary art. And I looked at him, I was foxed, I had no clue what I was supposed to do. For the simple reason we all grew up with the idea is you eat to live or for health reasons. Uh, and especially with Goan food, you get these big bowls of rice, curry, fish thing. And I kept on looking at all these dishes in the restaurant and I said, how do I showcase this at art as art? Now we managed to do something, and I just tell you, I went back to the drawing board and I started going back to see what all goes into culinary art. And I said, okay, these are the four principles. At that time, I just finished my second book, The Culinary Heritage of Goa, which was basically not too deep into understanding the nuances of Goan food, but generally categorizing, etc. So it was a very simple thing with a simple food. Like today, one lady came to the art park and says, show me a vindalu. I want to eat a vindalu. And I said, ma'am, we are not doing vindalu this time for the simple reason you get it in all the restaurants. We're doing something which is completely different, something unique, something off the regular beat. So people have got fixed mindsets, and we said, all right, this is the first time we're doing it. Let's keep it simple. So we just put up these simple things, but I had to do it for another 2 years. So that's the time then I really did a lot of soul searching. I worked on four parameters: reinterpretation, contextualizing, a sensory experience, and storytelling and narrative. Now, they sound very huge, but I realized that one thing when you're talking about the reinterpretation and contextualizing. When I went to this old lady in her house, and a lot of them, there was no tuna fish in being cooked in their kitchens. And I immediately went and I asked them, I see mackerel, I see sardines in terms of the omega-3 fatty acid. Why is there no tuna fish? And then I came to know that it was a old myth, tale, tradition, you call it what it is, that the fishermen, the moment they caught a tuna, they throw it back into the waters because these women believed that the tuna had too much of blood and it would raise the blood pressure of the family. So there was no tuna fish cooked at home. And that's why today, even today, you very rarely see tuna being cooked in kitchens. The second thing is jaggery. No sugar till the Portuguese made it a status symbol around the 18th century. It was just the black jaggery made of the palm. It was the white jaggery made of sugar cane. And that again, mostly for health reasons. They were focusing on that thing. So I said, okay, we told let's take the coconut. If we are talking about reimagining the homemaker as an artist, because now it's a culinary festival, and I found out a very interesting coconut preparation called gons. Now, a lot of people maybe have not heard of it. It's a sweet where they take the tender coconut strips and sweeten them and put it on butter paper, and it's served there. And the Goans were very concerned about harvesting their trees till it was really ripe, because they used to get a lot of oil, coconut oil, out of the coconut. So they would never harvest it in advance. And I said, okay, here is one artistic old lady somewhere down the decades or centuries who managed to find out that they could use the tender coconut in another way. So that again was a thing which I found redoing, and I started picking up all those items over there. Sensory experience, boy, he spoke about texture. Now, I couldn't give a fish curry all the time and say this is coconut milk and this is coconut. It becomes very repetitive. I started hunting in old Hindu artisan homes, and I found a preparation which we call Koilatula Sungta. In other words, they are prawns where the masala is very close to the Pasi Patrani Machi masala, and it is wrapped in banana leaves and it is served. So that was a completely offbeat marinade for a Goan preparation. And then I found out also, like today in the art park, you'll find a preparation which the Muslims call Godi Hugi, even though it never did originate in a Muslim home. The probability of it coming from Karnataka and in the Muslim dynasty, and the people in the past never knew what to call the dishes. So they would have said, okay, I got inspiration from the Gori Hugi. By the way, the ingredients are very similar to our dos bhaji, which we make in Catholic homes. So that is a thought which really excited me. So I found that we could use different textures, different colored preparations, different thought processes, and work on that. So I believe that we are talking about, yes, storytelling and narrative. What I had to work on is create the change in the mindsets of people in terms of how, and I used to focus only on Goan food, how the food is prepared, how we perceive the food, and how we really value its thing for our legacy.
Thank you for that. So, what do we, if we come to the art park, what's one dish we should make a beeline for, or maybe three?
Oh, now they're going to get very angry because I've got two chefs sitting here.
I know, that's why
And
I'm asking.
and each of
His
them,
dish, her dish, and then
they are very proud about what they have taken out. Now, if you are curious to know how food was cooked without the chilies, everybody, when I told them I'm going to cook food without chilies, the first thing the team at Serendipity will told me, no, they won't like it. Nobody will eat that food. How many did you sell today? 40 thalis they sold today in the first thing. Of No, no, others. I'm talking about without chilies. Now, the chefs there went to a house in Perne, and there was an old lady who was there who turned around and said, why are you worried about chilies? Use black pepper as a base, and then use khaskhas, fennel seeds, cinnamon, cloves. There are two more ingredients, and we couldn't make out the difference. It was so marginal. And when we went to taste those preparations, we were really impressed. So we've got the Hindu artisans and we've got the Muslims, which are pre-Portuguese. So none of the Portuguese items are used in the food. And then we have the Gaut Saraswat Brahmins and it's a very interesting thing. I had a problem with the Indo-Luso food because again, we're talking about oral transition. We're talking about a lot of these ladies. I asked them, one told me it's pesh the mayonnaise, the other said mayonnaise the pesh. So in between, I was totally confused trying to document all these things. But we managed to get a menu there. So if you want to try out an Indo-Luso and see how those people cook the food, there are preparations like the caldereda, the bolo sandival, things which you don't see normally in restaurants. And then, of course, we have the Christian. They were normally the converts. People get very confused between the Indo-Luso food and the Christian food. So these were the converts who used to have preparations like Samarachi Kodi, Warn, and all these preparations.
all right, I'll be there tomorrow. Um, Thomas, this year, the Serendipity, you're presenting an immersive experience into the future of food and culture. What does Lost taste like in collaboration with QTP and Immersive? Tell us about this.
Okay, so,
When can we come and see it? Plug it in.
so most of my life has been spent cooking professionally and being a chef. And like I said, I started traveling across India to learn and absorb food culture over the last 11 years. And somewhere along the way, it started dawning on me more and more that I was extracting and not really contributing or giving back. I was also experiencing the same elements of loss that we've spoken about so much today across food traditions, across farmlands, with the climate crisis, issues of hunger, food waste, um, losing a sense of identity through a lot of this. And then I would come back to this fancy restaurant, and that dichotomy was too jarring for me, to the point where I decided to step away from being a full-time chef about 5 years ago to kickstart the Locovo. And the Locovo sits again very broadly at the intersection of food and impact, in that we use mediums like storytelling and advocacy and partnering with farmers, food producers, grassroots organizations across the country, and highlighting their work, connecting them to support each other. We've recently launched the local food club where people gather across the country to meet and engage. And so, with this year's curation, I wanted to bring and make people feel that same sense of loss that I felt over the years, so that hopefully we can nudge people to act and change behavior and reflect, and carry some of that with them. So the project is actually Black Mirror meets Indian food in the year 2100. So it's pretty dystopian. It's an immersive experience. I've always believed in the power of interdisciplinary collaboration. So we've actually got Quasar from QTP, Immerse, which is a production company. We've got light designers, sound engineers, actors, projection mapping, set design, costume design, all of that coming together in this half an hour experience. It's at the old Directorate of Accounts building. There's 13 shows a day from 12 p.m. onwards.
Every half hour? Or?
Every half hour, but there are breaks in between, and there's 10 slots. But yeah, so I needed people to feel that viscerally, and we're doing that through an immersive experience. Um, but for all of you here, I will also say that I don't want to end or leave people with just that sense of loss. So there's a final room which you go through, which also gives you some hope and agency.
But in 2023, your curation of the Lakovor, audiences were invited to see food as memory, resistance, and pleasure. So this is a big change from like in 2 years, right? So what changed for you along the way, and and how does this evolution reflect where you think India's food conversation will go next?
I don't see it as an evolution. I think in 2023, our curation was much larger and broader. We were the only curators for culinary arts. So there were multiple projects that spanned across memory, culinary diversity. In fact, we did something called the Goan Village, where we worked with the Goa Livelihoods Forum that works with 40,000 women through their self-help groups, and collaborated with the Indian Institute of Art and Design to create branding and set up stalls for them at the art park. We did something called the Longing for Home project, where we recorded recipes in through conversations with people, because again a lot of it is hard to document through writing, but as conversations with people, and we presented them. We also had uh, an organization called Zindabad come in and collect food zines from across the world and across India, about 350 zines in a library, and they did zine workshops. So I think with every curation, I just explore and figure out what themes to bring to the forefront. This year it was just one project with some workshops that are still tied to this theme.
Wonderful. Just not to, I know we're sitting at Serendipity, but what is the role of festivals like Serendipity, and this is for both of you all, in building a more accurate and respectful narrative around food and regional food? So, what is the importance of having such platforms for people like you all?
All right, I live in Goa, and we are very insulated. Actually, if you really see, we are quite content with life. We love everything, not this noise outside, but we love, especially those in the villages and all. We love this. But the world is changing out there, and we really do get a chance to actually see, or maybe we don't want to see, but this sort of display of I'm using the word talent, which is a strong, because the creative minds are coming out with such unique projects that whether I hear Zach talk about it, or Manu Chandra talking, or anyone, they're all in culinary arts. We do tend to take a little bit of that information that will help us in our own lives on a day-to-day basis. And that too, also a lot of our chefs who get the time to come, unfortunately in December, but still they make the time to come, they themselves get exposed to what is happening, because we are a tourist destination. And as far as, okay, I'm talking about the culinary arts here, as far as food is concerned, people who visit us do look for, new things and new ideas and new experiences. I think that serendipity just brings it all on one platform in these 10 days.
Nandita, see, I'm doing good things. I'm not just kidding. I honestly believe in that question. As a platform, we all need platform.
I think, as Odette mentioned earlier, most people see food primarily as sustenance, even though you engage with it in different ways. Today, as a society, we're so disconnected from where our food comes from, who's growing it, what's going into it, how it gets to our tables, and the intersection of food with not just memory or resistance or pleasure, but also identity and caste and labor and gender and politics and history. All of that doesn't really manifest in mainstream narratives. And I think Serendipity provides an incredible platform to be able to explore that for the curators. And I think for me, the the biggest pleasure in working with a festival like Serendipity is the autonomy they give to the curators in terms of saying, you have a vision, we trust you with it, take it all the way.
As I mentioned, it's like a laboratory. It's a place of exchange, a library. Odette, I'm going to go back to you on another whole thread of conversation around storytelling. You know, you've worked across media from books, television, community initiatives to narrate Goa's culinary story. You've chronicled Goa's ever evolving landscape from taverns to contemporary interpretations. How do you view the balance between preservation and innovation? And when does revival become reinvention?
In today's age, that's a very, very critical question, Asad, because we who do a lot of work on the older part of life cycle, and today what we see, there's a big disparity. Let me talk about very simple things. I worked a lot on ingredients and recipes, especially where Goa is concerned. And one thing that comes across very strongly is we used to have these taverns, very small places where people could go there for a drink, and the tavern owner would sit across and tell stories to you. He would go to the back area, pick up bimli, tamarind, all these sort of things which were growing in his backyard. No fancy food. It would be served to you 1 hour before lunch. Everyone would go home then, and then say 2.5 hours before dinner, 1.5 hour to 2 hours. Other the wife would get angry, I guess, before dinner, and then that was their lifestyle. Similarly, they had the khanavats, which were on the roadside, where you would have them serving rice, fish curry, fried fish, and people would go there for a very simple meal. Now, a great case of how a tavern got reinvented, I would talk about if those of you who have visited Martin's Corner in Benauli. Carafina, who used to be the matriarch of the family, used to have just 4 tables, and she would have para, which is a fish pickle, and maybe a reshad, mackerel reshad served, and people would just sit there, eat something light filling, and they would go. Today, they have explored, the children have come on board and they've explored Goan food to a bigger extent, and now they're running a very big restaurant business, which everybody knows about. So, and the Khanavats, of course, sadly, they have closed down, but a few that are still existing. That was basically where the fish thali origin has really come from, because the way that food used to be served and how they were, now they're putting all plates and everybody comes to the Goa fish thali. That is something where they have reinvented themselves. You know, I believe that there can be a balance, but something is very scary too. I had a conversation with these people from Green Triangle. They do a lot in terms of preservation of the identity of the seed culture. It's a little bit of a very strong topic for me at this point of time. And they were sharing a few decades ago, there were about 80 varieties of mangoes, and today it has dropped down to just 34 varieties. And another thing which they spoke about was the Korgut rice, which Goa was known for, which today people are finding very difficult to get, and they've started using Jyoti rice from Kerala. Now, this Korgut rice was used to make a kanji or pears, and it was very, very healthy dish which people would have at 11 o'clock in the morning, or maybe when they were sick, because it had a lot of healthy aspects. But the Gen Next today perhaps might not like something like that. And that is maybe where reinvention could come into the when it comes to these very traditional preparations. Just imagine having a little of that rice in a raw mango, pickled raw mango, with a little bit of a spicy sauce on top, and served like, you know how you have the stuffed aubergine farci with rice inside. Some creative person could come across and say, all right, let me do something like that, where these traditions are not lost to a small extent. So it does happen that we do face a lot of problems. We've seen the sad situation of our fields today. where either they are barren or cemented. So either way, that rice is not going to come into
But
existence.
in the time where attention spans are shrinking and there's a new trend every day in food, right? And especially in this Instagram generation, how do you see storytelling as a way of keeping heritage alive?
All right, then that's very interesting because attention span for long stories, no way. I try to engage a group of young kids into understanding the history. After 2 minutes, they just tuned off. And I'm saying, oh my gosh, I should have had a reel or something like this in place. They would be glued to their phones and listen to it far more than me talking across with them. Because their minds flip off after 1.5 to 2 minutes. They just can't take anything more. But if I'm talking about keeping our heritage alive, I would suggest that colleges, catering colleges, give a little bit of this origin of our history, especially of culinary history, to these students, because even till today, nobody focuses on regional cuisine. Regional cuisine is left. We are catering for cruise liners, we are catering for big five-star hotels. But if you look for a Goan chef today, when the aunties are now non existent, there is nobody. Another thing is, yes, we have adventure trails. They give a standard thali. A person is eating and say, okay, that is Goan food. But I would love, because that is part of the way I think, I would love somebody to go down the rivers and say, okay, the Arabs went down this route and let's now grill a dumba and pretend how they lived at that time and relive an experience of the past, so that these youngsters feel more, what used to do, attuned and have a sense of pride in their legacy.
Uh, Thomas, your philosophy champions local, both as ethical and as a creative choice. So, how can chefs and storytellers engage with regional cuisines responsibly, ensuring that the revival efforts are benefiting actually the local communities at the end of it?
Yeah, this is something
Nice question
we
again.
think about a lot. um, I'll give you the example of the Wild Food Festival that we do, and this is something that happens in Bombay in the monsoons every year. I've been involved with communities in Palghar through an organization called Triple O Farms for the last 8 or 9 years, and at the festival we bring those communities to Mumbai to share some of their knowledge, their recipes, their ingredients. So there's a display of close to 300 wild vegetables from the forests, native seeds, and people get to taste at least 60, 70 different vegetables they've never tasted before. And we also decided a few years ago that this is a great opportunity to get young culinary minds involved. So we actually now do the festival at culinary schools where the students can kind of work with them as well. But the reason I'm actually bringing this up is that along with the Wild Food Festival, we've also done wild food menus on with restaurants and things like that. And I think 5, 6 or 7 years ago when we did it at the Bombay Canteen, again very successful. There was storytelling involved. There was we engaged with different stakeholders from media to guests and things like that. But soon after we were done, the Triple O firms in the communities were approached by these bigger hotels to say, "Hey, source this for me. Give me truckloads of Garbandi and Fatangadi." And thankfully, I mean, there was some intervention from Triple O firms to make sure that the exploitation didn't happen. What we did when we s- s- worked with wild vegetables was to say and work with the communities to understand what their needs are in terms of um, what they consume as a village or a couple of villages, and what is in excess for us to then work with. And obviously that requires a lot more involved time and work to be able to navigate through vegetables not being available and communicating that to the guests who come to the restaurant. But it's still worth exploring that. But today wild foods have suddenly become trendy. I see chefs in the industry um, making it their USP through the menu, but there's very little attribution or credit to where where they came from, who are the people behind it. I don't know if they're adequately compensated. So I think that's something that needs to really be handled with a lot more attention and care, where we need to be more mindful of who this is serving, and to what end.
Interesting point. See, change is inevitable, right? So your traditional dishes are going to evolve whether you like it or not. But who gets to decide whether this is acceptable or not? Is it the communities, is it the chefs, or is it the diners?
People with privilege and agency.
This is for me. It's a very interesting thing because, as you say, a homemaker community,
Hmm.
they're very proud of the food that they cook, traditional. Secrets die with them. There's very rarely do those legacies come out.
Hmm.
If I do it with the chefs, at least the chefs will pass it on to a few other chefs. And if those chefs get a lot of transfers here and there, at least the choice of that recipe moving from place to place does exist. If you're talking about the third was the
So it's basically who gets to decide if it's the communities, the chefs, or the diners, if it's
We
acceptable.
face a lot of issues where the diners are concerned with their love for Goan food. It will take a long time. It's not as popular maybe as the Kerala food because that is promoted more vocally and on tables, or the North Indian food which we talk about. So it will take time for people to accept. Uh, we want them, so that I leave them as the last question, but ultimately the chefs will cook to please them. So it's like
So just building on that, Goa increasingly, I know somebody told me it's the San Sebastian of India. And, because of the rising restaurants, your culinary, tourism is happening here. For those working in Goa's food landscape like yourselves, how does this comparison, does it help you or does it hurt, hinder? Because does it take away from Goa's brand of what they're serving and kind of piggybacking off another city's success?
I believe they have contributed to the fact that at times people call Goa the culinary capital of food, because it has created such a impact and beautiful locations and all these issues. But yes, I feel that to a small extent, uh, the competition faced by locals is that they have slowly lost their will to work on this traditional menus, and because again commercially they're looking in terms of how they can survive from day to day. So yes, it is very very positive, but still I think it's a little upsetting because of this other factor.
Thomas, what do you think? Tourism shaping or distorting the food cultures of places like Goa, Kochi, or even Mumbai, for that matter?
So I've been to San Sebastian,
Yeah. So,
incredible city, and if you've been there, you'll know that at least 80% or 90% of the restaurants there, traditional or modern, are local cuisine centered, right? In Goa, with the new influx of say 200 to 300 restaurants that have opened up in the last 3 to 4 years, that's not the case. In fact, I would say maybe one out of every 30 or 40 restaurants that are opening up um, is kind of honoring Goan culinary heritage or doing something tied to it. So I think that is a disservice. There is an opportunity here in the sense that there's so much diversity. Imagine if chefs in Goa collaborate with Odette and bring some of the recipes that she's documented and archived and the community that she works with and collaborate and bring that to the forefront through their menus and recipes. So that's one. And secondly, I think this explosion of restaurants have also led to um, staffing crisis. That there aren't enough people kind of growing through the ranks to be able to do justice to the restaurants. So quality suffers, and as I've come to see in at least in the last 1 week, most of the restaurants are empty, and we are in
They're all in the
December.
art park. That's why.
We're in December peak season, and what I hear from my colleagues in the industry is that, and over the last 2 years, the footfall has dropped.
But when you travel a lot, I do, and this gentrification and commoditization of restaurants. Like we were in Japan, where was in Italy. They were in Munich, there was in Italy. But how many Mario Batari restaurants do you need to go to everywhere? I mean, no offense to him, he's a great chef. But the thing is, it's becoming like it's the McDonald's of the fine dining, essentially, cropping up everywhere. And when in doubt, you just choose that because you know it, and that does disservice to the local cuisines. Um, Anything to add? No. Okay. So, what is one a culinary misconception about Indian coastal regions, the food, that you wish should finally disappear? Misconception.
Putting vinegar to food is not bad. Uh, Coconut dishes are not appreciated in Goa, but they loved in Bangkok and in Kerala. So I'm still trying to find a reason for that. It just doesn't make sense. So whatever is the misconception, I think we should eradicate that, because whatever the food, through coastal migration, a lot of dishes have also come in from Kerala into Goa, and also moved from Goa into Bombay. So it's a question of acceptance, whether you're having a prawn curry here, or of course that is quite popular, but then other dishes which people don't really like. Just think about what you're having in others. I think maybe the reason is because Goan cuisine has really not had a chance to move out of Goa in the true sense. It's always been kept as family guarded secrets. So maybe a lot of people don't understand the food, and that could be also one of the reasons.
Anything to add?
I think the distilling of coastal cuisines, and this is true for most cuisines in India, but the distilling of coastal cuisines to a few stereotypical dishes. I mean, we still have people who come to Goa and think that Goan cuisine is either fish thali or sorpatel. There's so much more. And same with Kerala, and whether it's a beef fry and or fish, right? There's so much more to it. And I think the fact that the culinary breadth and scope and diversity is not something that's known or explored is, I think,
But
a misconception.
in the beginning, I asked this question: how do each of y'all define coastal cuisine today? Is it geography, history, technique, or is it something fluid?
I think it's everything for me.
I counter it with a question: do we need to define it?
Man. It's part of the topic we're talking about, not given by me.
I don't think it can really be defined because the lines are so blurred across geographies, across communities. Yeah.
All right. So, do you want to open it up to a few questions and then I can wrap, or I can still go on? I mean, there's lots. See, firstly, putting this in Goa after my three prawn rishads I ate, time when normal Goans are taking their siesta, I'm made to have a intelligent conversation with these two experts. Is a very hard job to do. Anybody has any questions?
Hi, hi. Actually, I've struggled to find. So basically, you mentioned the Arabs were here. Obviously, we know that. Also, Delhi Sultanate. So it's like the Adil Shahs, etc. So there's been a lot of Muslim presence in Goa historically, but we don't see that in the food. And I think, I mean, I'm not a researcher like you, even though I work with history, but Suki Kolbi, I think, is the only one that I actually found. But can you mention some, of other food, like which have Muslim influence or directly descend from like the Arabs or the Konkani Muslims?
See, it's a very interesting, and we really have to go into detail with it, but just put it in a nutshell. The Muslims who landed up here came up for two reasons. Either they were the Arab descendants and they took on jobs as postmen, as salt pan workers, as bus drivers, etc. And they used to have a little pichda at the back, and they used to cook very simple food. The others came in for trade. So we had the Bieris who came in from the south. We had a lot of people from Gujarat, like the Khojas, the Menins. And I've only tapped two or three of them. And each of them have kept a very distinct cooking process in their communities, with the exception of one or two tweaks, like they will use brinjal in the dal gosh that they make here, because they believe that the Prophet liked that vegetable. So there are a few tweaks where local ingredients were being used, and Agasai was always known for good brinjals. So they retained as far as possible. These are the three communities plus more who came for trade 200 years back or so. I'm talking about what I call the Sunni Muslims, the one who remained here over the years. They have a fish curry that they call kadi. They have a very similar lifestyle of hanging their onions across the rafter. The only thing that you will see is they paint their house green. They have this pichda at the back where they pick up things just like the other communities and use it for their cooking. They make a lot of these bhakri rotis because they sit and they work. Probably, I've not traced the line. Could it have come from the cities? I have no idea. Because there was a lot of what you say, maybe when they were grinding their I would love to picture that, them grinding their chilies or grinding their thing. They would pass on information, yeah, and say, okay, that one's recipe is like this, so I'd like to do something like this. So there were very broad outlines, but still there was that very unique. What we did for the art park is when we went into these Muslim homes, they said they are Bijapur descendants. So we did a lot of talk with them in terms of what we found a dish which is the machika salan. Now their things was ka salan. Again, if you see the ingredients, it's very close to a shagoti, but the texture is different. So again, I feel that food has moved from one kitchen to the other, but they've retained their own identity. Hmm?
I have a little bit of a complicated question, but hopefully I'll get be able to wrap my head around it while it comes out. So you've covered everything from oral histories, and food anthropology. I think should have its own methodologies when it comes to oral history, and you can't really do the same thing as you do for other oral history. But having said that, we've done a little bit of work on the coast of Kerala, and because of Kerala being so urban, the whole picture is quite different from other coastal areas where this nuclear family has already kind of happened along that coastal commons area that people are living in. Families are already reduced to just a single person living by themselves. So there's no, or say a couple all by themselves fishing in the morning. The produce is taken to the market, whatever little of it goes to the market, and maybe two fish are kept for as sustenance for that two-member family, right? So when we're talking about this whole tradition of cuisine and all of that being passed down today, what is that for that coastal community? People who don't even have rights to the land that they live on because tidal flooding is such an issue. The water's coming up. Their houses have been lost, and they don't even have papers for their plot of land that they live in right now. They can't get money to even rebuild or do any of that. So, what is the relevance of documenting this food knowledge? And isn't it far more intertwined with all of the other knowledge systems that you were talking about? There's a lot more being lost than just the food. So while we center the food, we tend to, because this is quite privileged, we have to say that as we archive this food, it's a digital process. Predominantly today, we are recording things using audiovisual and say text, computers, etc., etc. What is the positionality? What are the issues around positionality when you're talking about something like this? All of us doing this work are not from the communities that really we're foregrounding in this whole thing. So when it comes to position, what are the questions that have come up, and what have you faced while you've been doing this work?
I'll just give an example. You brought about Kerala, but I'll talk about Goa. Times are changing to such an extent that we used to have what we call tribes in Goa. There used to be the Dangar tribe, the Kunbi tribe, the Velip tribe, about four major ones and a lot of smaller ones. Now, Kunbi tribes were settled in Kankon, and they were known for their Kunbi saris, their attire, and the chilies that they used to grow in that region. Their food was mostly on barter system, very simple life that was lived in. Can you imagine today if you go to the villages and ask them, can we see you dressed in a Kunbi sari? They feel very bad about it. They said, no, we are no longer the tribes. And the same thing goes for the Gaudas. They think in terms of a sort of status level because tribes for them is something. And agree with what you say that if we could look at, how they have the American reservation system and create that sort of a village atmosphere and have people go and visit those places with that uniqueness of what is existing over. I think it would be a beautiful thought, but that would take a lot of people's agreeing to be part of it, number one. And number two is we need help from all quarters to get something like that done.
Yeah, I think all of these things are interconnected. There is a lot that needs to happen and be actioned out across, say, whether it's around um, land ownership, livelihoods, opportunities, but I don't think that one should say someone like Odette, who's done so much work over the decades, um, should not continue to do the work that she's doing because I feel like we're all trying, at least many of us are. I do think that, I mean, at least especially through the work of the loco, we constantly ask this question, and like we talk about who to center in our stories and who gets its say. I don't think there are clear answers. I don't think there's one answer. I think it's an extremely complex space to enter, and one that we should. Um, and I think wherever we can, we do. But like I think it's like Audit said, it's for a lot more people to come into this to start working on it.
So it's not building on that, but it's to end this. If the coastal cuisines were to write a new chapter today, what would the central theme be? Sustainability, identity, innovation, or community? And that's, you have to wrap up with that question.
Okay. Shall I put them in order?
Either or.
All right.
He doesn't want to define, we know that, but he's going identity, innovation, or community.
I think first I would put identity. If
You don't have to choose all of them, just one. No? It's all right.
only one you want.
If you want to, you can have a whole.
Because
you know.
no, for the changing times linked to identity, we should think of innovation. Did you use innovation as a second word? Yes, we should think about innovation to how to sort of package the whole concept for people to accept it. It's not something that you can just turn around and say, you just swallow it. And this is again with all the work I'm doing, even for the chefs to swallow it is a tough thing because they are ultimately cooking commercially. So for me, if you're just saying I pick up two, I would say these two would be. I'm sure a chef would have a different.
Let's hear that.
I would say innovation to be able to center the communities and the ecosystems around them to hold on to their identities and not just sustain themselves for the future but thrive.
Thank you for that. Do you have a little more time or should I wrap? Shall we have a little fun? At everyone's expense. Let's do some rapid fire. So this is one word answers for both of you. Go to coastal comfort food dish.
Go to coastal comfort food dish would be a fish curry.
Quickly, this has to be fun.
Yeah, mean polichadu.
One, keep the mic. One ingredient you can't live without. Fast, guys.
Garlic.
Potato.
A dish that defines home.
Oh my gosh, that's a dish that defines home would be.
It has to
Okay.
be fast.
Okay.
That's
I'm
the fun
thinking
part.
what defines home. Okay. A nice beef curry with potatoes.
You just love your potatoes. Street food or fine dining? Come on, Zach.
Oh, street food for sure.
All right. Most underrated street food or fine dining? Quickly.
Underrated?
Street food or fine dining?
Street food for fine dining, a roast omelette plated in a unique way.
This is this or that answer. You're
no.
not playing the game correctly. I think
no,
I'm
no,
going to leave.
You're saying a street food for dining. How would I want?
No, choose between street food or fine dining. No, I don't know.
I like street food.
All right. Most underrated coastal ingredient.
Are you kidding?
Okay. Pass. Come on.
Kodampuli.
I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's good. Kokum. Okay. I love kokum, by the way. No.
Oh, sorry.
Most underrated coastal ingredient.
Tamarind.
Okay. All right. Then this is the last one. Last unforgettable meal you had. Art Park? No.
I have to say Art Park because I have been doing all the tasting behind the scene.
Thomas?
I was at home in Cochin with my family and
Mother's
lunch.
food.
Yeah.
Ah, see. Mothers and sons, right? So, as we wrap up, one truth stands out that coastal cuisines are living archives shaped by trade, memory, migration, and a fragile ecosystem. So, what we heard here today makes it clear that the ChatGPT did this for me now, preserves these traditions. It isn't nostalgia, it's cultural responsibility. And reinvention isn't a threat when it's rooted in respect. And if there's anything, the future of Indian coastal foodway will depend on how we listen to communities, to the landscape, and to the stories carried with every ingredient. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for being here on this ongoing journey of taste, identity, and transformation. Thank you, Serendipity, once again for this opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Did we miss Tanya?
I don't know, we'll have to ask them.